Drop almost any mammal into water, and it knows exactly what to do. A dog paddles, a horse paddles. Even a newborn deer can cross a river just hours after it's born without ever being taught, pound for pound. Chimps are $1.35 stronger than humans. Now drop a full-grown chimpanzee into that same water. There's a real chance it drowns. It's not about weakness. Pound for pound, chimpanzees are about a third stronger than humans. It just never learned how to swim. Neither did gorillas, orangutans, or bonobos. Meanwhile, on a different branch of the primate family tree, there's a monkey that leaps from the treetops and swims 20 meters underwater to escape crocodiles. So what happened? Why did our closest living relatives lose a skill that almost every other mammal on Earth is born with? Layer 1. The simple version. Here's the short answer. The actual swimming motion, head up, legs kicking in rhythm, is something most land mammals are born already knowing. Scientists call it an instinctive locomotor pattern. It's basically the walking or running motion the animal already uses on land, just performed underwater. Watch a dog walk, then watch it swim. The legs move in almost the same rhythm both times. The body already knows the pattern, so water isn't asking it to learn anything new. Apes don't move like that. Chimpanzees, gorillas, and orangutans spend most of their lives doing something almost no other land mammal does. They climb. Their real specialty is swinging, reaching, and gripping through trees. Their long arms, short legs, and wide shoulders evolved for hanging onto branches, not for paddling through a lake. So, when an ape ends up in deep water, there's no built-in stroke waiting to take over. It has to actually work swimming out, the same way you'd have to work out an unfamiliar sport. Most apes never get the chance, or the reason to try. That's the simple version. But it doesn't explain why apes ended up different in the first place. For that, we need to look at what's actually happening inside their bodies. Layer 2. The real version. The first piece is buoyancy. Humans, even lean ones, carry a decent layer of body fat, and fat floats. It's lighter than water. Apes carry very little body fat and an enormous amount of dense muscle, and muscle sinks. A gorilla's body is built almost entirely from the stuff that doesn't float. The second piece is bone density. Ape skeletons are noticeably heavier and more rigid than ours, built to absorb the stress of climbing and swinging from branch to branch. Heavier bones mean less natural float, full stop. Then there's a detail almost nobody thinks about. Human nostrils point downward, which helps keep water out when our face tilts toward the surface. Ape nostrils point forward and slightly upward. In the water, that's basically a funnel. Add a stiffer spine that doesn't bend the way ours does for a smooth stroke, and you've got a body fighting the water on 4 separate fronts at once. There's a fifth piece too, and it's about reflexes, not bones. Most strong swimming mammals have something called a diving reflex, an automatic response that slows the heart rate and holds the breath the instant the face hits water. Humans have a strong version of it, even as newborns. Apes don't reliably have it at all. Pay attention to this next detail because it explains almost everything else. 2 researchers, Renato and Nicole Bender, spent years studying exactly this question, and their theory goes back further than bones or body fat. It goes back to how apes' ancestors actually move. Most swimming mammals already had a steady, repetitive walking gait on land, the kind of motion that translates almost automatically into a paddling stroke. Ancestral apes didn't move that way. They lived in the trees, reaching and swinging instead of walking in a fixed rhythm. So when the moment came to need a paddling instinct, there simply wasn't one sitting there to borrow. This idea isn't just academic either. Researchers studying bonobos and chimpanzees, 2 species split apart by the Congo River, believe the river itself helped divide them into separate species. Not because the water was too wide to cross, because neither side could swim across it. Layer 3. The real-world stakes. This single gap in primate evolution has shaped decades of zoo design. For most of the 20th century, zoos surrounded ape enclosures with deep water moats instead of bars. It worked because keepers knew the animals wouldn't try to cross. The water itself became the fence. 2016, Cincinnati Zoo. But that same design created real danger whenever something went wrong. In 2016, a toddler at the Cincinnati Zoo climbed into the gorilla enclosure and fell into the moat. The zoo's gorilla, Harambe, pulled the boy through the water. Officials later explained that tranquilizing Harambe in that moment carried its own risk, since a sedated gorilla in deep water can drown. Zoo staff made the call to shoot him to protect the child. The incident pushed zoos worldwide to rethink moats, replacing many of them with glass and dry barriers instead. Not exactly a foolproof system. Now compare that to the other branch of the primate family. Proboscis monkeys in Borneo don't just tolerate water, they depend on it. They've evolved partially webbed feet and hands, and when a clouded leopard shows up, the entire troop leaps from the canopy and swims for it, sometimes diving 20 meters underwater to disappear from sight. In Thailand and Myanmar, crab-eating macaques take it even further. They dive to the sea floor, hold their breath for up to 30 seconds, and use rocks as tools to crack open shellfish most monkeys could never reach. Both of these swimming specialists are also running out of the habitat that shaped them. Borneo has lost roughly a third of its mangrove forests to logging and palm oil plantations, the exact rivers and swamps proboscis monkeys depend on to survive, swim, or not. Same broad group of animals, same basic body plan, completely different relationship with water. And that gap exists for one reason. Monkeys, as a group, kept the instinctive swimming pattern that ancestral apes lost somewhere along the way. That doesn't mean every monkey is diving for crabs. Plenty of species stay out of deep water by choice, the same way a person might avoid the ocean without being afraid of a bathtub. The difference is that choice is behavioral. The underlying mechanism is still there if they ever need it. For apes, the mechanism itself is largely missing. Layer 4. The exception. Cooper, Missouri, early 2000s. This is where the story takes a turn nobody expected. In the early 2000s, a chimpanzee named Cooper, raised by a family in Missouri, started diving into their backyard pool repeatedly, comfortably, like he'd been doing it his whole life. Surya, South Carolina. Around the same time, researchers documented an orangutan named Surya, raised in captivity in South Carolina, doing something similar. Diving headfirst, swimming underwater completely at ease. Renato and Nicole Bender filmed both of them for what became the first scientific documentation of swimming and diving behavior in apes. It was a genuine surprise to the field. For decades, the working assumption was that apes simply couldn't learn this skill. Cooper and Surya proved that assumption wrong, but notice the pattern. Both animals were raised by humans from a very young age, around water, with constant encouragement and zero fear conditioning built in. They didn't inherit the ability. They built it slowly, the same way a person learns to swim. And here's the detail researchers find most telling. Neither ape fell back on the instinctive dog paddle most mammals default to. Both moved with something closer to a breaststroke, pulling with both arms at once, which happens to be the same basic style humans use. The Bender's theory is that this stroke might trace back to the same reaching, pulling motion apes already used to swing through trees, just repurposed for water instead of branches. That's the real difference between the two halves of the primate world. For monkeys like the proboscis monkey, swimming is instinct, hardwired in before birth. For apes, it's a skill, available only under very specific conditions, most of them will never encounter. And somewhere between those two extremes sits us. Built with an ape's body, dense muscle, heavy bones, upward-facing nostrils and all. But somehow the one great ape that turned swimming into something we do for fun. Instinct versus learned. So no, most apes can't swim, and they never learned to. That isn't a flaw. It's the side effect of millions of years spent perfecting a completely different skill, moving through trees instead of through water. Monkeys like the proboscis monkey and the crab-eating macaque went the other direction, and water became one of their biggest advantages instead of their biggest danger. Cooper and Surya prove the ability isn't completely out of reach. It's just buried under instincts evolution never bothered to build. And the next time you see a zoo exhibit using water instead of bars, you'll know exactly why that design exists, and exactly which animals it was never built to stop. The real question isn't whether apes can swim. It's how many other obvious animal behaviors we've quietly assumed are instinct, when really, nobody ever taught them otherwise.